when you start worrying about making everybody happy, it's over. It's just over, because in making one kid happy, you're going to make the other kid unhappy. You have to have your standards, you have to have your values, and you have to coach to those, and try to find as many people that will follow along in that path that you believe in.
You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast. Today's guest is Kathy Taylor. Kathy is the head women's lacrosse coach at Colgate University, a national champion, and the former president of the IWLCA. From winning state titles in high school to reaching the pinnacle of the college game, Kathy has spent her career building championship cultures and developing elite leaders. But as the landscape of sports changes, so do the challenges of leading this next generation. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's dive right in. What is the biggest difference between coaching this generation of athletes than the generation of athletes you coached 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, Justin, to start off, it's been like over 30 years. So, I mean, I don't know where they went, but I actually am not currently coaching. My last coaching chapter was at Colgate University. And so I did coach for over 30 years. I started in high school and Division III, Division II, and ended at Colgate University at Division I. And so it really has been a privilege to see the changes and to also move up into different competitive levels. The biggest challenges today, I think, are kids still need to know how much you care about them, and they need to know the why. They need to know the why more than they used to. They used to just do whatever you asked them to do and be okay. Coach told us to do that. But today you need to give them the why they need to run, or why they need to take, so many shots before they go home. And ultimately it comes back to, so you can be successful. So I think a large part of it is kids still want to work hard. But there is a lot more stimuli out there for a young athlete. A lot more feedback, instant feedback. Let's not tiptoe around the fact that the parents are very much involved in today's athlete at every level, not just getting them there when they're 8 and 10.
Yeah, let's go right there, because I deal with parents a lot. I have a club basketball program, and part of it is educating parents. And for you as a collegiate coach, right, you've coached from youth all the way up to college, but how do parents have an effect on their college students when their students aren't even living with them?
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes it becomes a really kind of fake relationship, because they're not there at the practices. If you are driving an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old to a club practice, a lot of times it's an hour and a half or whatever, and you're killing time on the sidelines. So you're watching, and you kind of are seeing what's going on, and have a lot more touch points with where your child is at, how they act at practice, and also like how they compare to their peers. As you start coaching at levels where parents are not at practice, there has to be a certain amount of trust that the parents have in the coach, and their ability to assess talent, but also develop talent. And I think that parents today want to be such a part of every step of the way, and in doing it, really this is going to be a strong language, but in ways kind of cheat kids out of having their own experience. And being able to come home and to say, hey, this is what happened in practice. And it can be their story, not a parent's story. So it's, a little enmeshed today and all the way up through college for sure, where mom and dad are on speed dial and the players are not off the field for 30 seconds before they're grabbing that phone and texting. I got yelled at practice today. I had a run today. I don't like playing lacrosse anymore. It's just on speed dial. And a parent loves their kids, that. And so parents want their kids happy. And being able to have that immediate, instant connection with home has been very difficult sometimes for coaches to manage, because there's not that time, that pause, going home and then retelling the story. It's right when it's hot. And so parents involved is great, but it can be a limiter too.
That's interesting. So I think about, we have a policy. If your athlete wants more playtime, they have to have a conversation with the coach before the parent gets involved, right? So thinking about that at obviously the collegiate level, when as time went on and the phones are so prevalent, did you have to create some certain boundaries where you're like, hey, don't reach out to your parents for like an hour until you cool off?
Great point.
Yeah.
The phones with young adults are very much an appendix. They're right there. And so, yeah, we tried different things about saying, hey, no phones on the bus for a while. Sit talking in the locker room first. But as far as over controlling it felt as if I was taking a right away from the child and the parent. And I never want to do that. I believe in that healthy relationship, but the problem is it really becomes a collective experience that the parents are living the athletic experience with their child versus something that is happening on the side and shared. And so that's where I think it gets a little difficult for coaches today to keep that healthy coach player relationship and keep the parent at bay for their hugs and kisses and pick me ups and validation and stuff, and but there's got to be that trust, and for so many years it was almost an unconditional trust, and I was always grateful for it. And I think every coach says that to the parents. Thank you for trusting me with your child. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I want to keep them safe. I want them to thrive. But that trust can erode. And part of that is that instantaneous communication. And everybody wants to protect their kids, and now they're upset after practice. And it's a collective experience. The parent feels it too now immediately.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about and I want to talk to parents about is allowing their kids to feel pain. Like there's pain in playing sports and losing and not getting the playtime you want, whatever, right? But I feel like this generation, I'm in West LA, so I deal with a lot of parents that want to take that pain away. But like, I feel like for me, like I was cut, I sit the bench, and there's so many lessons that I've taken with me throughout life. Can you talk about the life lessons that pain and sports teach us that we need to encourage the parents to allow their kids to feel some of that pain?
I think it's the healthiest thing you can do. And I think it's hard to start that at a high level. I think that type of encouragement really needs to be like fostered and encouraged and taught at the youth level. Whether it be in school, whether it be in sports, it's, you learn so much through trial and error, and to have a parent or even a person who cares so much pave the way so that there is smooth sailing through childhood, they will not be equipped to handle disappointment as they get older. And that is part of what we are seeing now in today's coaching, is that kids are protected very young. They're safe. We're going to keep you in a safe place. And we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and we want everybody to get a trophy. And it's tug of peace, and we have really, really brought sport down to a place where we want everyone to feel good. And there is so much good in sport in the difficult moments. And you don't get the high highs, Justin, without some of the lows. You get a mediocrity where a lot of people will walk away because it's like, what did I accomplish? They kind of got me through. And I didn't ever get that thrill of being exhausted and then winning, or, beating a teammate out for a position or something.
Right. So I'll share my experience as a coach, like being a young coach. Like I've made a really big emphasis on creating safe space. Like psychological safety is something that's really real, and I'm curious, how we want to balance that with like, you know, having high standards and high support. And so that's something I talk to my coaches about all the time. But I've come to the point where last year I feel like I created this super safe space, and then people weren't coming to practice as much, or like there was a little bit more of an acceptance of what you're talking about, mediocrity. And I was like, this year I'm like, I'm not doing that. So like there's a couple of things where I'm like, if you forget your jersey top or shorts, your kid is not playing. They need to learn responsibility of bringing things. If your kid is not giving effort and playing defense, they're not going to play if they can't stop someone. So I was very upfront, at the beginning. And I don't know much about the game of lacrosse, but I'm imagining that defense is very, very important, just like in every other sport. So it's like a non-negotiable. So some of those things where it's like, we're still going to love on your kid. We're still going to create a safe place to fail. But I cannot promise you that they're going to leave practice happy and joyful and like yippee every single time after practice.
Yeah, Justin, you can't chase happiness, right? You as a coach, you can't even chase love. You have to go for respect. And
Yes.
if your goal is to build resilience and grit and inspire competitive play, um, you have to ask a lot from your athletes. And in asking it, what you are really saying is, I believe in you and you can do this. And it's a safe space. So if you can't do it, we'll try again tomorrow. But I'm not going to lower my standards or the standards for you, the expectations for you. I believe in you. And I think that message is so important and very powerful, and develops really good competitive winning cultures in so many aspects.
No, 1,000%. Yeah, yeah. We don't want to lower that standard. Otherwise, then the standards, you know, yeah, you would maybe be meeting that standard, but you're not going to reach your potential. And that's what I told the athletes yesterday when I had to, whenever I'm hard on them, I'm like, look, I'm going to be hard on you because I believe, like you're talking about, in your potential. Like I want to bring the best out of you. When you don't think that you can when you even I want you to like push you even past what you think you're capable of. Like that's my job as a coach. You're not going to love me for it sometimes. Like there's going to be days where you're like, I hate this coach. And I feel like I'm at this point where the first time in my career, I feel like players don't like me at the end of the practice. I'm like, good. I don't want your present self to like me. I want yourself in 10 years to like me because you show up on time to your job and you do a good job.
You've helped build the person, not just the player. And oh, by the way, you can't build a player by making it easy for them. You're actually kind of giving up on them and giving up on your potential. So I always say, you got to keep it safe. And if you ever cross the line, as I say to all my athletes at every level, you got to let me know. I'm not perfect, but because I am a pusher, I want to push you past what you think, is enough. When you're tired, I'm going to say, hey, I think you got a little bit more in you. And my goal is so that at some point you will then turn around and say it to somebody else. And you have that team when they start saying things to each other before you have a chance to say it to them. And it's such a good feeling. It's such a great feeling when you're like, I was just going to say, hey, come on, you guys got another, whatever in you. And someone else said, come on, you guys, we're not done yet. It's the best.
Yeah, that is the absolute best when your athletes start to repeat the phrases that you talk about, and then it's a player led team, and those are the best teams. So, talking about building leadership, can you talk about how did you develop leaders at the collegiate level, the high school level? What did you learn about leadership development, and how did and I know I'm asking like 1,000 questions in one, but it's really all about how do you develop leaders in your athletes?
Such an important thing. One of the first things that when I spoke at a convention about leadership, and I said, it's probably the biggest thing every year that I would look at my team and I would say, okay, who are my leaders going to be? Because if you do not have leaders, if you do not have more, plural leaders, and you need followers too, but if you don't have leaders, your coaching staff can't do it alone. So, sometimes you have to develop those leaders as you're talking about, in the arena, while you're trying to develop a team at the same time. And sometimes you are gifted, student athletes that just, are hardwired to be leaders. So I always believed it was my responsibility to develop leaders, and to have everybody, when they left their experience of being on our teams, understand what a servant leader and how they act. We were never a program at any level where the senior players didn't do chores, or that the best players didn't have to carry the ball bag. We were very much everybody pulled their weight. And I think that's servant leadership at the top. When I took over programs, a lot of times everybody would wait on the seniors. And I would say, hey, I think it's really the job of the seniors to take care of the young kids, not the young kids to take care of the seniors. And really kind of develop that, so that they saw their role as they passed through a period of time that we shared in a program, that the longer they're there, the more they should help out. And that really good players and people always take care of others. We always talk about, you get what you give, and how much are you giving outside of just showing up to practice? Are you helping anybody else? Are you bringing anyone along? Are you taking any extra shots? When you punch a clock, you get that type of performance. When you do a little bit more with relationships or the game, you get a higher level of return. So, you know, give more of yourself and you will find you will get more.
Yeah, 1,000%. The more you give, the more you receive, right? And that doesn't mean you necessarily will receive it instantaneously. Not everything is a transaction. It may come 10 years later from a relationship from that teammate. And I really like this idea that you were talking about with seniors carrying the bag, best players doing the most work, because I feel like that's what's most important. Now, as your time went on, and just some of the things that I'm seeing are, especially in the basketball world with NIL space. I don't even work with NIL athletes, but just some of the entitlement or delusion around some of the better athletes and how I've seen, better athletes treat their teammates. Can you talk about, has that shifted, or is that, kind of based on team culture and it's our responsibility as coaches to nip that in the bud? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so I will say that I do think the responsibility is partially on the program you run and the culture you develop. And, like you say, meeting with the parents and the players and what your expectations are. If you have a concern about your playing time, any concern that involves coaching an athlete, they got to come to you first. And that is absolutely the best way to do it. You're not, stiff arming the parents. You're just merely saying, this is a coach player relationship. It starts there. That's the foundation. We don't skip the foundation to get to the second floor, right? And so your thinking on that is exactly aligned with my thinking. But I do think that teaching players what the expectation of the program is, and getting star players to understand that they are just as important as keeping the locker room clean, just as important at being on time, just as important at helping out. That there shouldn't be that. Yes, there is in playing time, and yes, there is in starting, but that there is not a hierarchy of value to what you bring to the team culture. Our team culture is so important, and our gameplay is a different thing. And so we need both to be firing. So there are going to be people that are going to play more than others because they are more talented, and that is just the way it is. But that doesn't mean that somebody else has to clean up your junk in the locker room, or that you can roll in late just because you're the starter. It's like you said, if it doesn't matter if you're the MVP, if there are team rules and you broke, we all suffer. You suffer and we suffer.
1,000%. Then everyone's being held to the same standard, and I really like the idea and the notion of everyone brings value to the team culture, right? And one of the things that we covered in our athlete parent orientation is body language, and the type of teammate you are contributes to your play time, not just your talent. I don't care how talented you are. If you're a terrible teammate, you're going to sit on the bench, right? If you have bad body language, you'll sit on the bench. You won't play. I don't have a problem. Like, I'm at the youth level. My job isn't predicated on wins and losses. So I think it's a little easier for me to say that versus someone like you, who coaches at the collegiate level.
Yeah, but the thing is I do believe that the best programs, um, there's always going to be a few outliers, kids that just drive you crazy, and sometimes they are your talented kids, and sometimes they are your role players. There is no season that's perfect. There's no team experience that doesn't have a little drama. But I do think that the responsibility of the coach is to really control the amount of drama, and really teach what being a good teammate's all about. We use the word teammanship. There's sportsmanship, there's gamesmanship, and then there's like teammanship, and like how you show up for your team is really important no matter what role you play on game day. You still have to show up in that best way you can on that role. And I think that was a little easier 20 years ago, to be honest. I think that there is a little bit more pressure, and I think there's pressure on kids. Parents love their kids, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, and they don't mean to, but unintentionally they can ask a lot of questions that all of a sudden the child feels as if they are defending why they're not playing, or and given a choice, when a parent asks a child, what's going on in practice, like why aren't you playing? You're better than them. And they have to decide, do I tell my mom and dad that I'm not as good, or do I just say like, well, I don't know, the coach doesn't give me a chance.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it in the pressures of that way, where it's not maybe necessarily like, hey, you need this. It's just simple questions like, why aren't you playing? And the athlete has to make this choice of, do I lie to the people that I love the most and tell them the truth that might hurt them? And as a young kid, like, even, working with college athletes, right? They're not fully developed yet. They're probably going to lean towards like, telling their parents what they want to hear. So it's like this almost cyclical culture of, like, I need more playtime, right? So it's really interesting. I haven't thought about that, and as we're talking about, drama a little bit, I'd love to dive into some of the challenges that you faced as a collegiate coach, and different allegations from athletes about, mistreatment. And I would love to hear your side of the story in terms of how you navigated that as a coach, because I'm a young coach. I mean, I'm 27, going on 28 in a couple weeks. I'm sure at some point in my long career, I'll face similar, challenges that you have. So as a young coach, like that, will probably face that eventually. How did you navigate that? And what were those conversations like?
Yeah, I mean, Justin, as I said, I've coached for 33 years or something at all different levels, and had a lot of success. We won state championships at the high school level, Division 3. We were four Final Fours, Division 2 Final Fours, and national championship. So a lot of success, a lot of great relationships, amazing women out there doing everything from the military to leading companies to, uh, hang on one second. We should cut that off. I apologize.
No worries.
And just, you know, I have the ability to look back on the impact that I had on these girls and women, and it has been a privilege. And so my last chapter at Colgate, where, there has, as I've said many times, there's never been a season without a little wrinkle. I mean, coaching is a constant challenge. Like, do I push this kid? Do I talk to this parent? Do I talk to the trainer? There's that's the fun, right? It's trying to figure out, like, when you go home at night, like, that was bad. How do we do better tomorrow? It's a very humbling job, even with success. And
Yes.
so, being a mom of athletes and being a counselor, what I went through with this last chapter, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. And I'm not sure that I played it out right. I've always kind of just met with anyone who had a problem and been an open book. Um, at Colgate, my last chapter, anonymous complaints were made against me and sent to trustees, AD, the president, and they did it. After 30 years of and not a single complaint on anonymous complaints, they did an investigation. I was totally cleared. There was no, as they called them, no smoking guns. And I stayed in that because immediately with these accusations, I felt as though I was treated guilty. Like I said, I'm very honest. You wanted to hire a championship coach. I am a championship coach. I do push kids to get the best out of them. I am not malicious. And I've always been an open book. But they decided that I was, practices were hard. They were used to a different type of a culture, and it does happen with coaching changes. So if you go to a new team, you're going to have like a transition. And if that team is used to a coach that let him get away with everything and not hold him accountable, being on time, picking up a locker room, like, we're talking very simple things that in any program I've been in has been a part of it. You leave it better than you found it. That's my message when we travel. You leave that locker room better than we found it. And, after a loss, not everybody wants to pick up the locker room. It's not their locker room. So, but that's the type of messages I used to, and hopefully that's something you take into life. You leave something better than you found it. So the allegations were really, really hard on me, but I stayed because I wanted to coach and I hadn't done anything wrong. And I'm like, I'm just not going to get chased out with invisible social media blasts against me. I have nothing to hide. I came here to coach. Unfortunately, Justin, and this is why I hope it never happens to anyone else, it was really hate. I think it was really hate inspired, and it kept coming up. And so even though I was completely cleared, it became a division of our team, a division of our parents, division of our half times. I mean, not our half times, excuse me, our tailgating. And it really became difficult. Um, I fought so hard to keep the culture healthy, and I couldn't. And I stayed one extra year. I still had 2 years on my contract, but I stayed one more year to see if I could fix it, because I'd always fixed everything. I was always like, we'll get through this. Well, let this kid go. And people are really more on board. And they really were more on board. But there was just such I don't know, a drive to get rid of me, I guess. And I think eventually I realized it was just hurting everybody. It was hurting my assistants. It hurt the team. It hurt my family, my husband, everybody. Everybody was taking the pain for me. And I thought the only way to stop the pain for everybody was for me to leave. And that's why I left Colgate a year and a half ago. And so it was really tough. And I stayed to show young coaches that you should stay and you should not run if you've nothing. Don't let someone call you out for something you haven't done. And I left because to show young coaches that sometimes you got to go.
Right. And you know your worth as a coach, and you know that, I'm sure that there was obviously it was a very challenging period of your life. And you're probably asking, like, why am I still coaching? I'm sure is probably a constant question that's going in your mind every single day. And I mean, that's obviously an incredibly challenging experience. What I want to kind of ask you about is I feel like as coaches, it could be really lonely sometimes where we have to make some decisions that are that are challenging, that people aren't going to like us for, and we push our athletes. And I want to just kind of ask, like, how did you kind of get through that time, just as a human being? Like, who was your support system? Because I know that's something that transparently, I got burned out last year just because I was giving so much. Like as coaches, we give so much of ourselves, and I feel like there's this huge expectation of what a coach needs to be perfect all the time. At least that's the standard I hold myself to, is like I have to be at my best perfect self all the time. And when you have these allegations, you're seeing it on social media, I can only imagine what that does for your psyche. So I'm just curious how you got through that time and the support that you had during that time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a couple different chapters in that in that period of
Yeah.
my life that got me through. And initially, I I was stunned and devastated that they were going to do an investigation. I was just like, just ask anyone. And so that was really hard. But I was confident. I knew every incident, or knew what had transpired. It wasn't my first rodeo. I have two assistant coaches that are very loyal, and they were a huge part of it. Justin, two outstanding young women, one who had coached with me at two other places and came back to coach with me at Colgate, and that was Jessica and Tell Me Becker, and shout out to her, and Catherine. I was also there, and I was all of a sudden choked on her name because she just got married, but they were fantastic, and they stayed with me, and they believed in us. It was really a collective us. The three of us, just really believed that we could get through it, and I think I was the driving force. I was so determined, that we're not going to get chased out because a couple people are unhappy. There's always going to be some people that are going to be unhappy, and coaches have to know that. When you start worrying about making everybody happy, it's over. It's just over, because in making one kid happy, you're going to make the other kid unhappy. You have to
Yep. Yep.
you have
Yep.
to have your standards, you have to have your values, and you have to coach to those, and try to find as many people that will follow along in that path that you believe in. And I really believed in my path, and they did too. And I had great family and friends. So I had wonderful support, but you know what? That it got hard. And then it really got hard at the end. The last year was tough. We just couldn't get on the other side of turning games into W's. So I'll be honest. Not only did I feel beat up, unappreciated. Why am I doing this? I'm like I'm just so not used to constantly losing either, and that was hard because I believed my team was better, but we just
Yeah.
had too much other stuff in the air, and I needed for them to win. I needed to get the stuff out of the air, and that was that means I had to go. So
And as a coach, I feel like we put, at least I know I'll speak for myself. Like we wrap so much of our identity in just our sometimes not necessarily our worth, but just who we are as people into like this. Like coaching is a calling for us, right? It feels like, and it feels like if we're not meeting our own internal standards, we can feel like failures. So I can only empathize with your situation, and as you're a year and a half removed, what do you think some of the biggest takeaways you have for younger coaches that like myself, who are I'm building out a program, like how can we, like lack of a better word, avoid these situations? And like you say, like we're not selling ice cream, we're not going to make everyone happy. Like I definitely have had that realization, and I've had the same exact realization. Oh, I need to get this kid in, but that means I got to pull this kid out. So I'm gonna piss someone off at the end of the day. Like what are my standards going to be? yeah, I guess what are some of the reflections and advice for younger coaches like
So I mean,
myself?
I kind of feel like that might be an area that I could, explore in this time of my life. I feel like I have had a lot of experiences, kind of like this old person that has kind of seen so many things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The last chapter was pretty ugly. And I always say, like, if I could go back, would I have played it the same way? What would I have told my, a younger coach to do? And I think knowing myself, I would have just I stood tall. I would have just said, you can't just run me out of town. People, you can't make up stuff about people just because you don't like them. And so in the face of adversity, I would tell coaches to have conviction, and your values. And if you know you haven't crossed the line, then you haven't crossed the line. But I would also say, like, if you do cross the line, you apologize. I always say, like, if I'm pushing you too hard, or I have overstepped, I have apologized to teams before through the years. And, like, I was a little crazy yesterday. I'm back though. I'm back. I'm normal today. Um, but I believe, that you just got to let them see the authentic self, and you can't learn coaching in a book. You can learn a lot of leadership ideas and development and team building activities, but you have to tap into who you are as a person. And I do think a lot of it is like, what's your philosophy? And my philosophy as a coach was very honestly to develop everybody. I felt a strong sense of responsibility that everybody on my team was to be valued and to be developed, not just valued as a member of the team, but also developed in the game. That did not mean that you were going to start or get a bigger role, but you were going to get better when you were done playing on our program. And I took that to every camp I worked at, every time I did anything, I was always wanted, when people walked out the door, I wanted them to be better than when they walked in the door. And I worked very hard that everybody did, at whatever level they could do.
We share a similar philosophy in that aspect. That's my mission as well as philosophy, especially for youth, right? Like I named it Beyond the Game Basketball. I want to help prepare these young men and young women for life beyond the game. And so it's definitely a little troubling to me to see, kids from your team complaining, and I'm sure you pushed them hard, and I'm sure they, I guess they didn't like to clean the locker room or, or whatever it was, but I mean, at the end of the day, I hope that they, some of the athletes that maybe reported look back in 10 years are like, oh, wait, she did this to me for a reason, but I don't know. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. I'm optimistic anyways. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I believe that they will look back at it and understand. That the interesting thing is that was my last stop, and and I had a coach with me that had coached at two other locations, and they all worked hard too. I mean, every team that I've ever coached was a hardworking team built on fundamentals, and fitness was never going to be. We were never going to lose a game because the other team could play in the fourth quarter and we couldn't. So those were, I was, coaching philosophy. I was a fundamentalist. Fitness was important because you needed to have your stamina to hang on to a lead or to come from behind. I believe in that. I think that's a coach's responsibility to make sure their team is rested and fit. So I took that, like you said, I took it very seriously. That's the thing that I think killed me, is I've always taken my coaching very seriously. I had to quit a job in high school because I couldn't focus on my high school team. I mean, I literally, that's who I am. I can't do two things at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, I am in the exact same way. You just want to focus all your energy and attention on it, and um, you know, thinking about that, we've talked a lot about the coaching side of things, and we do have a lot of parents that listen to the podcast as well. So I'm curious, as we kind of enter the last couple of minutes of our episode, what are some of the things that what are some appropriate ways for parents to be involved and support their athletes and challenge their athletes that can actually help them in the long term, not just to help them alleviate their pain?
Yeah, I think helping kids, encouraging them to to take risks, take risks in life. Like, whether it's like, I've never gone ice skating, but you know what? I'm going to try and learn to ice skate. Like, don't narrow your lane to what you do well. But really, as parents in this generation, it's keep them off the screens, keep them
Yeah.
off the screens, keep them off the screens as long as you can. Send them outdoors, and then when it comes to sports, absolutely, drive the bus, get them there. Drive the car, whatever it is, get them there, support them, help them be responsible for their own equipment, help them carry their own bag. It always killed me when after a lacrosse tournament, like a very fit teenager I would be going to recruit would be handing their bags off to their moms and dads. And I'm like, what are they, And so, like, you want to raise great people, you hold them accountable for little things like that. And I think that you remind them that it's a team sport. Individual sports are very different. I've had children participate in those, but team sports cannot be customized for each individual player. And that's one of the things that I have seen in this modern era, that there is almost an expectation that, well, we got this we have to do. We got this, can she do this? I'm like, we can't customize it. We have to sacrifice for it. It is a team sport. If everybody does exactly what they want to do, we're never all going to be in the same place at the same time trying to build something special. So teaching them to sacrifice for the greater good is a big thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. That is one that I talked about as far as commitment goes, and that's why we were very honest and forthcoming at the beginning. Like, if your athlete's not in practice, they're not going to play. Like, point blank, period. Not and I had kids miss practice for tutoring, and like, look, academics are great, but why are you scheduling tutoring during practice time? When practice is, and so just some of those things that definitely are it's a quick way to piss coaches off.
Well, and I think parents can help. And you can't say, well, you know what, academics is more important. Obviously, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. Every coach knows that. Every
Yes.
parent knows that. But what you're saying, you're teaching them to customize their playing team experience, and you can't do that. And so I used to say that a lot lately. I was like, everybody wants to customize it. Like, oh, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do this today. I'm not going to do that. I'm like, whatever happened to everybody does the same thing. Everybody wears the same thing. It's okay. We're a team.
Right. No, and I've had it the point where someone's like, we have a merch package that you have to invest in when you join the team. And I've had a parent be like, he doesn't need that. I'm like, he needs to dress like his teammates. He needs that to go travel to our tournament games. So I know exactly what you were talking about. That's a really interesting point. It does feel like everyone is, I don't know if it's because, getting into colleges, they feel like they need to do so many different things that they can't commit to a team. But, being a part of a team, like, I look at it as like preparation for life. And you can't just show up to your job when you want to show up to your job. Like, it's a commitment to get paid. And right, obviously you're not getting paid when you're playing youth sports. But at the end of the day, it is a commitment.
You can't say you're on the team and having the shared team experience if you're not doing what everybody's doing. And I am a stickler on that. And I think that has been a real hard draw, is everybody is like, well, we got this. And then, if you have coaches that just are, fine with whoever can make it, but you're never going to be successful if you have everybody, or even a chunk of your team, that's customizing when they can be available to be a part of this team. It really, to me, the most successful programs are when kids want to change their schedule so they don't miss a practice, not a game, a practice, because that's where they know the work is done, and they want to be with those people, and they want to be a part of that.
Yeah, practice is my favorite. Practice is definitely my favorite. I mean, but I'm a coach, right? So but at least like in American basketball, I don't know what it's like for youth lacrosse, but American basketball, they, especially in AAU, it's like games, 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 games. That's what everyone prioritizes. But with us, we have, I think it's a 1-to-1 ratio. I know, And if we wanted to go to the European model, it'd probably be 2 practices to 1 game. But I got to play the game too. But yeah, there's just so much benefit to practice and being committed, and that's how you get better.
Well, but they can be fun. Like we didn't even talk about practices, but like I really do believe in when, the fundamentals are so critical, but the word fun sits right in the front of that word. And so, fundamental, competitive play in practice and that's not scrimmaging, but it is little games inside little games. And because competitors love to compete and the investment, it doesn't have to be a game, but it could be like how many, I want everybody to shoot 25 foul shots. Like, okay, who got the most out of 25 or whatever. You have to give little competitive moments to keep engagement in practice, especially, and practices, like you can't stay on one thing too long because everybody's attention span's a little shorter than it used to be 20 years ago.
I can imagine.
Just even like your podcast, I'm probably putting them to sleep right now. I mean, you can't stay too long.
Right. Well, they might be listening to it in multiple parts, right? Maybe not all in one sitting. So I
Listens.
Right. One person listens all the way through. Maybe they got a long drive. I mean, a lot of our listeners are here in Los Angeles, stuck in traffic, so it's a perfect opportunity for them.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for your time today. Where can people, find you? Do you put out content or potentially connect with you?
Yeah. So you know what? I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Kathy Taylor, and I do have a website, and it's basically, I think it's Kathy Taylor, CoachKathyTaylor.com. And I don't put out a lot of content. I'm just in the process of kind of, finding what that next horizon looks like. But I've enjoyed coaching, and I hope you have a great career in coaching. You have a great demeanor about you, and I'm sure kids love to play for you. And I will find my group. I might go back to the youth,
Nice.
because so much happens with kids, and you do a good job with kids. A lot of times, the rest of it gets easier.
Exactly. Yeah. For my job, I just want them to love athletics so they keep being athletic their whole life. Because I've seen so many kids burn out like their junior or senior year, like they don't want to even play basketball anymore. Like I had these kids that I started when they were freshmen and they didn't even want to play in the state playoffs. They lost in the southern section and they thought the season was over. Then they got this invite to go to state, and three of the seniors didn't want to play, which is like crazy to me.
Crazy. So, but that type of stuff happened, and those type of kids came to Colgate, and I think that they were done playing. And, I always used to say it because I was 18 years at the high school level, and I said, you guys can't get tired. We gave them rest. We gave them, because the longer I coached, the more I realized you do have to offer, don't be afraid of letting them rest. Don't be afraid of letting them rest. It's actually a great thing to throw in an off day that they're not expecting. And not let them get too comfortable with it, but rest is really important to go the distance. Because when I hear stories like that, like I remember parents saying this, Justin, in high school when I was coaching, and so many years, and we fought so hard to get to those state championships, and people are like, "Oh, I'm so tired." I'm like, "You're not tired. Nobody's tired. Nobody's tired. We got a lot more tailgates left in us. We're still going." And I would kind of coach the parents. Don't say it's okay if we lose, because then it's over. It's not okay. We're going to go the distance.
Hey, I love it. That's the mentality that you need. And honestly, I know for me, like sometimes as coaches, we need a day off and we need some recovery too. So that's what I'm trying to do a better job at, so I don't burn out.
No, you know what? You do have to pace yourself. And a surprise day off, like you guys don't get snow days where you are, but every once in a while we would get bad weather, in March, and I would be like, it's a snow day, and it was the greatest gift. And so those are things that you can give people. It's just like, what, we're gonna take today off. And so rest is a part of the journey for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Kathy. I got a couple of pages of notes here, and renewed sense of opportunity in terms of how I'm going to maybe address some of these challenging situations in the future. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.